other opinion is valid. And in fact, they have now criminalized free speech as part of their dogma, as part of their belief system. Anything that opposes them is now intellectually criminal. And that is why there is such a thing as political correctness and also hate speech. They're coming for us. They're coming for us. So you need to be hardened intellectually. You need to be prepared mentally. Right? You need to be grounded in your belief system so that you can talk to others, right? And not be weakened or destroyed. Not to be convinced by them with additional threats of violence, retribution, or coerced that way, right? Because that's what they're doing. That's where they're pushing this game. Protesters are incredibly violent, and they don't mind that. They think it's acceptable. And so I think we need to oppose them. And there's going to come a time. I don't believe there's a choice anymore. We're getting to a point where there's going to be physical conflict. There has to be. Because each side is demanding its position be respected. As far as people on the political right or the side of freedom, free speech, free motion, the right to property ownership and the ownership of one's own movements and efforts, we are going to have to defend that physically because they are coming to take it. On the left, they believe so strongly that their feelings matter and that their indoctrinated beliefs are so important that to oppose them itself is to create a criminal act, which they are authorized individually to lash out against or act violently against. And you'll notice that the positions I'm talking about on the left, the violent opposition, that is why it is usually done by young people. Hitler Youth, right? The early communists in the Soviet Union. It's usually young people are the foot soldiers of the left because they are inexperienced. They are completely indoctrinated and brainwashed at that age. And that is why the communists, the leftists, know that in order to continue and expand their concepts, they need to take over the schools. So I hearken back to the beginning of the video when I said they took over academia, or at least started to, well over 100 years ago, and have been pushing for greater and greater control, not only of the schools, persuading the teachers to push their ideology, but also the curriculum itself, taking it over. And that is what we face. Okay, it's not just about the battle of the sexes. It's not just about politics. It's about the control of your individuality. And once they control that, they control everything else in your life. And they need these young idiots out here. So fighting them, right? Intellectually battling them, I think it's a fine idea. But understand that there is violence inherent in the Marxist system. Right? It is inherent. It is a fundamental or basic tenet that when opposed and they cannot win intellectually, that they are to react violently. And that's where we're heading. And that's why you need to be prepared. You need to understand that. This is why women today, feminist women, are so violent. No one's hurting them or oppressing them. Who wants to rape a fat, ugly pig? And by ugly, I mean someone who is, their personality is ugly. And by fat, I mean they have the excesses of our culture apparent on them. They're not starving. They're not homeless. They aren't without clothing. They aren't without medical care. They are fat. They are spoiled. They have all of that. Everything, every good thing in their favor. Yet they want to rail against it and change the last thing we have, which is freedom of individuality. That is precisely what the Muslims oppose. They want all the good and then to take your individual choice away. That's what the feminists want. That's what the communists want. They want to destroy individuality, freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, everything. They want it destroyed. So you have to prepare yourself. You have to armor yourself. And then deal with it as you choose. But hiding from it, that's been demonstrated to do nothing but encourage the enemy to try harder. That is why ignoring things like feminism and cultural Marxism and political Marxism has really done nothing to stop it. Okay. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your thought. And most of all, I appreciate your comments. This is kind of a neutral discussion. I didn't want to bring up any specifics. Right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to influence you to be an individual and think for yourself. But definitely stepping back, looking at the bigger picture and realizing we have big problems in our world. And it's going to come to a violent head. And I think that that's just the way it is. It's come to intellectual violence. Because when someone doesn't have an argument and they feel so strongly about their position that they need to come after you. They need to come after you. And that is why I really believe, right, feminism is a horrible, horrible ideology. Because the longer it's around, the more violent it becomes, right? This idea of equal rights. That's what blacks used with Martin Luther King Jr. And who can argue against equal rights? Feminism screamed that they wanted equality for women. Who can argue against that, right? Equality, right, is different than mandated subjugation to someone else's positions or perspectives. There's no man that I have ever met that has told a woman, you have to believe like I believe or you are a criminal. But that is what they do to us as men, right? The radical thinking in the anti-white or the pro-black movement throws guilt, white guilt on every white person, so much so that white people hate themselves. They accept guilt and blame for what was done to people well over 100 years ago. And if they want to quote modern examples, I cannot accept guilt for what someone else has done, and I refuse to. And I refuse to pay for it. Whether the person committing the crime was white or black, and whether it was done in the name of whiteness or blackness, I'm not responsible. Right? But that's what they want to do, is they want everyone else to accept guilt and accept shame, to take the blame for, and then become an acolyte, right? Become a convert, the same way Islam demands that you accept that the Prophet Muhammad speaks for God, and that you convert or die. And then once you convert, you have to become an evangelist for their way of thinking, and then become a violent evangelist when you are opposed. It's a dangerous world we live in. And protesters that are violent are always on the left side. They're always on the Marxist, communist side, because they violently oppose others. Now, very quickly, but what about the violent opposition by those who wanted freedom? By those who wanted freedom, that is, those who rebelled against the King of England, right? What did they oppose? Did they tell other people how to think, or did they just say, we want to be free to think for ourselves? This is a big difference, and it is not a small matter to consider. When I stand up and say, I've had enough and I can't take it anymore, what I'm saying is I want my freedom back. And I'm really pissed off, and I'm willing to fight for it. That's a lot different than someone saying, I'm a communist and I want everyone to think like me and give up their freedoms, and I have no freedoms of my own, right? And there's the call for collective ownership and collectivism. That is completely different than saying, I want to be free and I'm going to defend and fight for myself, than to say, I want collectivism and I want everyone else destroyed, and I'm willing to take them down in order to achieve it. And I'm going to use violence to hurt others. There is a radical difference. There hasn't been a revolution for freedom. There hasn't been a fight for freedom in America since the Civil War. And that one was lost. But what was lost was states' rights. That is, individual states. But the fight for freedom from tyranny, absolute tyranny, occurred in our revolution, 1776. It's going to be horrific when it comes to blows over things like Islam, feminism, Marxism, right? Social fascism combined with Marxist principles. It is an ugly machine that is coming to hurt us all. And it's doing it slowly. And they're going to try and take over. Ultimately, they're going to need violence, and that is where we're at today. So beware, be strong, be intelligent, right? Use your head. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave comments below and give it a thumbs up if you feel so inclined. And subscribe if you're not already. And share this if you found it interesting. Share it with friends, family, and loved ones if you found it interesting. All right, this is John. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.